Hello all, you're welcome to today's class. So today we'll be drafting an overbust corset, which is also Victorian corset. Okay, so I have my basic bodice here. I have taught you how to draft a basic bodice pattern. So I have placed the measurements, that is the vertical measurement, the bust point, the under bust, the waist, and the hip point. So at this hip point, I added 1 inch to the full length. The length of the blouse is 24 inches. So I added 1 inch so that I'll be able to trim at the end of that is after joining. I'll be able to trim and leave like half inch for the hemming or the closure. Okay, so now we would proceed. So this is the shoulder line. Everything here you already know. So this very pattern will be having yoke, and the neckline for the yoke will be V neckline. So here I took the shoulder measurement. Then for the neck width, I took 4.5. So it's actually going to be 5 inches, but I took 4.5 so that by the time I now turn in the neckline or finish up the neckline to arrive to 5 inches. Then this is the v-neck. The depth is 2.5 because I want to get 3 inches. Okay, so I use 2.5 so that by the time I'm done it will arrive like to be like 3 inches. Okay, so the next thing now after this, since I said it to be having yoke because we want to be able to have our bustier separately, and in case you want yoke you'll be able to add yoke to it. So that is the method we'll be doing. So it's like 2 in 1. Okay, you can actually draft a bustier or overbust corset without yoke, but we are using this method so that you can have the overbust corset and you can have it with yoke if you want. So the first thing to do now is to place the neckline for the corset parts. Okay, so since it will be having yoke, this is the neckline for the yoke, then the overbust corset also have its own neckline, right? So in this case I'll be using 7 inches. So it depends on what you want. You can make it as high as you want, you can make it as low as you want. So if it's not going to have yoke, you just want to make an overbust corset, it is advisable that you come up a little bit so that it can cover the bust. Okay, unless you want to show cleavage. Other than that, you can use like 6 inches. So since this one will be having yoke, and the lace I'll be using for the yoke would have lining, so I'll be using 7 inches. So I'll mark it 7 inches from the shoulder line. Okay, so I want to also mark here so that I can draw a straight line. So now this is the neckline for our overbust corset. So I'll label it as N so that it will be easy for us to know. Okay, so when you have done this, the next thing is to place the bust span, nipple to nipple divided by 2. In this case the bust span is 4 inches. So I'm going to just mark the 4 inches because all allowance will be needing to join will be joined later on the fabric. Okay, we are not going to add any seam allowance here. So 4 inches, I'll mark it from the neckline all the way down. Okay, so now I'm going to just connect it with my ruler. So after marking your dark line, the next thing you come to the under bust. Okay, now it depends on the bust measurement of the person. If it's a big bust, like bust 36 upward, it's advisable you use 2 inches on this side and 1 inch on this side. But from bust 35 downward, you can use 1 inch on this side and half inch on this side, or 1.5 on this side and 1 inch here. So you just your bust tightening or under bust tightening depend on the size of the bust, because you want to create a cup that would accommodate the bust. So in this case the bust circumference is 38 inches. Okay, so I'll be using 2 inches on this side. I'll mark 2 inches on this side, and 1 inch on this side. So wherever I place my tape, it doesn't matter, I'm just marking 1 inch, okay, because of the tape head. So on this side I'm marking 2 inches, on this side I'm marking 1 inch. So just do that on the, so you mark it 2 inches here, 1 inch here on the under bust and on the waist. Then at the hip side, what we'll be taking on both sides is 1/2 inch, okay. So we take 1/2 inch on both sides on the hip, 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here, okay. So note that on the under bust and waist, so 2 inches, 1 inch, while here 1/2 inch on both sides. So I want to be sure I marked correctly. So when you have done this now, just connect it like so. So you connect this one like this, and you connect it to the 1/2 inch point you made here, okay, like so. You also connect this one like so, and you connect like so, okay. So this is the dart leg for this side. So by the time you have drawn your dart leg, now you come to the bust point, okay. You just connect this to the bust point using your curve. So you just connect it this way to the bust point, okay. So connect to the bust point, and on this side you connect as such, as seen, okay. You connect this side. Now at the neckline now, for bigger bust like the bust that I just mentioned, 36 and above, you take 1.5 inches on this side and 1 inch here. Then for smaller bust, you can take 1 inch on this side and 1 inch on this side, or 1 inch on this side and 1/2 inch on this side, okay. So it depends on what you want and how curvy you want your cup to be. So here I'm taking 1.5. I'll mark 1.5 and 1 inch on this side, okay. So this very one, I'll connect it to the bust point like so, okay. So just smoothing it out, do not make it sharp. While this one, you can connect it just straight to the bust point like so, okay. So you just connect. So we have created our dart, and this is our bustier, from which you will now create other darts that will now make it a corset, a Victorian corset. So one more thing before you start drafting, make sure that your paper is wide enough to take all the darts you'll be adding. So in the way to get it is this: you take your bust, or sorry, your hip circumference divided by 4. We know that much of the dart will not be getting to the hip, but since the hip is the biggest measurement here, we'll just use it, okay. So the hip measurement divided by 4 plus all the darts you'll be using. For example, we have 3 inches darts here, that is 2 inches here and 1 inch here, that is 3 inches, okay. You add it, we'll be creating another dart, and we'll be creating that in front here. So just add up all the dart. So the total dart I'll be having in front: 3 inches here, 1 inch by the side, and 0.5 inch at the center front. So altogether will be altogether my dart will be 4.5 inches, okay. So this hip circumference divided by 4 plus that 4.5, that will give me 15.5 inches, okay. So that will give me 15.5 inches, because the hip circumference is 44, divided by 4, 11, plus 4.5, that is 15.5. So in a nutshell, just make sure that your pattern is wide enough to take all the darts, okay. So that's what I'm trying to say, because we'll be replacing each dart that we took. So by the time you have created the first dart like this, the next thing is to place your horizontal measurements, okay. So we are going to place the horizontal measurement and temporarily close the dart, or I mean close the pattern, then we'll create another dart. So let's just do that. Just follow it step by step. Okay, so now I'm going to place my horizontal measurement. So first of all, I'll create my armhole. Okay, so for my armhole, I'll place my bust circumference divided by 4. So the bust circumference divided by 4 here is 9.5. So I will just mark my 9.5. This is 9.5. Then I'll create my armhole. So remember, this is a front pattern. So the front pattern is a bit deeper. So I'll just be coming in by just ½ inch. Okay, so this is the midpoint for the armhole depth. So I'll be using ½ inch. I'll come in by ½ inch and create my armhole for the front. So remember what we learned during the basic bodice pattern. So this is the armhole. Okay, so the next thing now is to close our pattern, but we're going to replace each of these darts. Okay, because by the time you cut out the dart and you join, you'll be short of it. So what we have here, I have 1.5 here and 1 inch here. Okay, so altogether that is 2.5. So I'm going to extend it at this armhole here. Okay, so the dart here, this is where you will replace it. Then you also replace this one, but for now just leave this like this and place your horizontal measurement, because that is from where you will now be able to replace your dart. Okay, so at the under bust, remember we place the bust measurement here. So for the bust is already covered. So come to the under bust. The under bust circumference is 33 divided by 4, that is 8.25. So first of all mark my 8.25. okay, then I'll replace this dart, which is 2 inches here and 1 inch here, that is 3 inches. So here it is. So now I want to temporarily close this pattern because we'll still create another dart. So I don't want to have so much lines here. So let me use chalk. Okay, so that when let me use a different color marker. So I'll be using a different color marker to close up the pattern because it's to be like temporal closing. Okay, so we don't want too much lines that will confuse us. So I'll use red marker for the temporal closing, so that by the time we are done, we'll know the actual what we will know exactly what we want or what we are making use of. Okay, so here now, like I said before, we have placed the under bust circumference. Okay, this is the under bust circumference. Then add my darts. So this is 2 inches, 1 inch, 3 inches. So from here I'll mark it. Okay, so remember this other darts replacements here. So the next thing, you come to the waist. The waist divided by 4 is 8.5. So mark it. So in this very pattern, we are not snatching the waist because the client doesn't want to snatch waist. She just wants it to be just the way it is. Okay, so we'll replace our 3 inches dart. Here it is. Then at the hip circumference is 11. Like after dividing by 4, we'll have 11. Here it is. Then replace this 1 inch dart. Remember our dart here is ½ inch on both sides, so that is 1 inch. We're going to replace it. Okay, so you replace it. Now I will connect my points. So this is our bustier pattern. So just with this now, you can make a two bustier or bustier with yoke, but we want to turn this into Victorian corset. Okay, so for us to do that, we would measure the distance, what we have here, okay, at the upper at the under bust, the distance from this closure to this dart. We are going to measure it. So by the time you measure it, find the midpoint. Simply fold your tape like this and you get the midpoint, okay? So I'll be using blue this time because this is the dart we want to create. So when you have marked it, whatever you have here, measure it and place it on this side as well. Okay, then you connect it all the way up. So just place your ruler like this and trace it all the way up and down. Okay, so trace it wherever it gets to the armhole and to the hip point. Okay, so when you have done this now, at the waist you come in by ½ inch on this side and ½ inch on this side. You do same at the under bust. Okay, so you're taking ½ inch, whichever way I place my tape does not matter. All I need is just to mark ½ inch on this side and ½ inch on this side. Okay, you do same at this under bust. You mark ½ inch here, ½ inch here. So when you have done this now, connect it this way to the armhole line like this. Let's connect it like this and you connect like this. Okay, so this one as well, you just take it down like this. Connect this one like this. Then you also connect it to the hip line like this. So sorry, connect it this way and you connect it this way. Okay, so this is the dart, this is the second dart, which is the side dart. Okay, so at the center front now, you're also going to create that, but this time around is at the waist. Okay, so you come in, that is go in by 0.5, that is by ½ inch. You mark it. Okay, then you connect it to the bust line like so. You connect to the bust line and to the hip line. Okay, and to the hip line as well. So you can see what we have here now. We have created the second dart and the third dart, which is at the center front. Okay, so we can now finally close the pattern. So this is what I told you to take note of initially when you're placing your paper. Okay, so note the amount of darts that will be coming in because you're going to replace it. So for this very one, we have replaced it. So now we're going to replace this other two. Okay, so just calculate what you have and you extend it to this side to close up the pattern. So at the bust point, we have nothing to replace except for, let's see what we have here. You measure what you have here. Okay, just measure what you have here. So here we have about 0.2 inches. Okay, 0.2 inches. So you come here and you replace it. Okay, then you come to the waist. Oh sorry, this is the under bust. You come to the under bust. Remember, we have ½ inch here and ½ inch, that is 1 inch. Okay, then you measure what you have here. We have 0.2 inches, so altogether it is what, 1 point, that is 1.25, sorry, 1.25. Okay, so I hope you know how to read your tape measure. So we have 1 inch here and 0.25, just like we have here, please. So we're going to replace it now from this our line. You mark it. Okay, so you also come to the waist, you do the same thing. At the waist here we have 1 inch. that is half inch on both sides, and at this point as well we have one half inch. Okay, so that is what 1.5. So we're also going to replace it here. Then at the hip, we actually have nothing to replace, okay, because this actually connects straight to the hip, like so. So there's actually nothing to replace here. We have already replaced this one, and here there's nothing to replace. So our hip is going to just remain the way it is, okay. So what we'll do now is to connect, okay. So we are connecting this way, like this and like this. So let me just connect it. So you're connecting like this and like this and to the hip, okay, like so. So what we have here is just our dart replacement. So don't mind the way the shape is. This is just how it's going to be. But by the time you stitch it, by the time you have stitched all these darts, this place will fall in place. It will become shapy. So this is just what we have. Now, this dart is going out. These are the areas we'll be cutting out. Okay, we'll be cutting out all this area. We'll be cutting out this, and we'll have a pattern. We'll have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so by the time we draft the back, we're going to also label it accordingly. So just name this one 1, name this one 2, and name this one 3. So I marked it to get the red line to show that we are taking everything. So the red line is just a temporary closure we did. Okay, so I actually like doing that with chalk so that I can clean it, but for the sake of the tutorial I had to use marker. So this pattern 1, 2, 3. So you can still go ahead to label it in different ways. You can name it center front, center front 1, center front 2, and side front, okay, whichever way, but numbering it like this is still okay. So when we draft the back too, we can still add this will be B, this will be B, C, and this one will be C, C, D. Okay, so you understand why I named it this way. Let me cancel this my hip point. A, B, B, C. So this alphabet I wrote, it shows that this is how we're going to join it. B and B will come together, C and C will come together. So when we drop the back, we'll continue from D, D, E, E, F, like that. Okay, so this numbering or alphabet is just to show you how you're going to join it, so you won't get confused, because by the time you have cut out this pattern it might be confusing. So but we are not yet done. The neckline now, we're going to shape it however we want, okay, and the armhole as well. So we want a sweetheart neckline here. So what I will do is come down by 1 inch from this neckline. So when you're placing your neckline for your bustier part, bear this in mind. Whichever neckline you want, if you want it curvy, if you want a sweetheart, whichever one. So if you want a sweetheart, you can determine how deep you want it to be. So I measured 7 inches here. So the yoke I'll be adding will be having lining, so it doesn't matter if this goes deep a little bit, okay. So altogether that will be 8 inches from the shoulder. So I came in here by 1 inch from this neckline. So I'm just going to connect it to this point. So all you need to do is just give it a nice shape however you want it to be, okay. So I'm just going to connect this one like this. Okay, so this will give us our sweetheart neckline. So you can just come in a little bit. So this is our sweetheart neckline, okay. So just going to go this way, okay, and we'll have our armhole, okay. So this is just going to go like this. So since we are having yoke, this is the yoke. So just going to cut it out following the way it is, okay. So this one is going like this. So this is it for the front pattern. So now that everything is okay for the front, we are going to draft the back. Okay, so actually the back is supposed to be like a continuous drafting, like from the front now we will continue with the back. Okay, but there are some people that cannot draft, like they are not used to drafting, continuous drafting that way. But in other words, that is from for the back pattern. Now you start measuring from this side, so that at the end the side front and the side back would be together. Okay, so if you don't know that pattern of drafting, the simplest way to do it is turn your pattern to the other side like this, and you draft the back. Okay, so most times our marker usually appear at the back of our pattern, be it on a white pattern paper or even on brown pattern paper like this one. Anything you wrote here is going to still show at this other side. So whichever pattern paper you're using, just use a nice marker that would make it appear on the other side. Okay, so I hope this is clear. So I turned my paper so that by the time I draft my back, it would have the same, that it would continue with the front. But most times we are used to taking our measurement from this way, the way that is facing us. So I'm actually doing this for those that cannot draft continuous pattern. Okay, so by the time we are done drafting this and we turn it, it will just look like a continuous pattern, because that's how we're going to label it. So we want to stitch inseam, we want to achieve inseam finishing, and it's going to be continuous stitch from the front to the back. So I hope that is clear. So this is the back pattern. It's still our basic bodies. The neckline for the back will be the same thing as the front. Remember our shoulder darts, because it's going to have yoke. That's our shoulder seam allowance. Okay, because it's going to have yoke, and this is also the yoke for the back part. Okay, this is our neckline, this is the bust point. So ignore this line, it's just the armhole line. So I just extended it to this part, so which is also the chest line or upper bust line. This is the neckline, the bust, under bust, waist and the hip. Okay, so the next thing to do now is to close our pattern temporary. Okay, just by placing our basic measurement. By the time we close it, from there we'll now create the dart. Okay, so I have placed the bust circumference here. So I will skip it there. I'll skip this part and go to the under bust. So the under bust here divided by 4 is 8.25. So 8.25, I'll mark it. So this time around, like I said, it's temporary closing. So let me still use my red marker. Okay, so that is the bust for under bust point. Then the hip is 8.5. I'll mark it 8.5, and sorry, this is the waist 8.5, and the hip is 11 inches. Okay, so this is the hip. Now I will close. Remember I said it's just temporary closing. This is the actual measurement. This is the actual measurement. Okay, so this is it. This is the actual measurement. So by the time you have closed your pattern like this, okay, remember the temporary closing, you now measure what you have placed here. That is this bust circumference you placed here. That is this, the measurement you have here. Okay, measure it and divide it by 3. So what I have here is 9.75. Okay, so 9.75 divided by 3 is what I'm going to use to place my darts. Okay, so 9.75 divided by 3, that is 3.25. Okay, so what I'll do now is measure 3.25. Okay, so I'll measure 3.25 from, that is from here. Now I'll measure 3.25. So I'll mark it. This is 3.25 and another 3.25. Okay, so that is it. So I'll mark it all the way down, 3.25 here. So let's just finish with one. 3.25 3.25. So after marking it, just connect. Okay? So from this line now, I'll mark another 3.25. So the measurement you took, just share it. So I'll mark it again here. Then I'll draw my line again. So this is all we have. So now you come to the waistline. On each side, take 0.5. So here, I'll mark 0.5. 0.5 on this side and 0.5 on this side. That is half inch, okay? So by the time you have done this, you also go to this side, you mark it, or let's just connect this one. Let's finish with this one, then we'll go to this other side. So by the time you have marked 0.5 here and 0.5 here, that is half inch on both sides. So you're going to connect it now. You connect up to the neckline and to the hip, okay? Like so, because that's how the dart is going. This is how you have your dart. So let me use this longer ruler. So just carefully connect to the neckline like this. Okay, so you also connect this one. You connect to the hip like this and like this. So by the time you have connected this dart, you do same on this side at the waist, okay? You also mark half inch on this side and half inch on this side, and you connect again. Okay, so these are the two main darts we have for the back. Then at the zipper area now, these are zipper allowance because this very pattern will be having zipper. Okay, so let me also extend my neckline. So this is how the neckline is going. Okay, so at the zipper now, that is at the zipper allowance area, you come to the waistline. At the waistline, go in by half inch from here. You go in by half inch, okay? So this is it. Now connect it to the bust point. Just connect it to the bust point like so. Okay, and you connect to the hip point as well. Okay, so this is it for the back. Now all these darts we have taken, we're going to replace it. Okay, we're going to replace it from after this our temporal closure. So what you would do is this: you would just take the darts, measure them. Okay, so at this bust point we have darts to replace here. We have about quarter of an inch here plus quarter of an inch, that is one, that is a half inch. Okay, so just replace it here, half inch. Then at the under bust we also have about 0.75. okay, the same thing here, and at this point you have about 0.25. okay, so you can just calculate it and you replace. So you can mark it, you can take it one by one, okay, but don't make your mark too obvious. So the first one is 0.75. this is 0.75. so let me just use other part of my tape. This is 0.75 plus another 0.75 plus 0.25 here. Okay, so this is where I would have it. Okay, then at the waist we have 1 inch here, 1 inch here, and half inch here. That is 2.5. So from here I would measure 2.5 and mark it. Okay, so at the hip we have nothing to replace. At the hip, nothing to replace, so we just connect what we have here. Just connect what we have here. So it's going this way, then like this, and to the hip. So whatever shape you have after drafting has to do with the body shape of the person and the darts. Okay, so you can see the initial actual body shape, but because of this darts we will replace. That is why the shape is like this now. Okay, so by the time we sew the dart, the shape will get back. Okay, to go back. So we are cutting out this part. So this dart here is necessary to eliminate zipper bulge. Okay, so when you're going to use zipper, make sure you do this. Okay, so we are also cutting out this dart. We are cutting out this dart, and this is what we have. So now I'm not going to label this pattern this way because I'm going to turn it and continue the labeling from the other side, from the front. Okay, so that is why I said you can either draft it as continuous pattern or you turn it this way, but after drafting it this way, you take it back to what it was before. That is to the way you placed your pattern before. So by the time I turn it this way now, you can see what we have. This is the front and this is the back, facing, the sides are now facing each other. So if you understand what I mean by continuous drafting, so you must have been seeing this, but it's just that some people don't know how to draft from this side. Okay, they coming from the left is not so easy for them. So just use this method I've shown you. After drafting your front, you turn it and draft the back. At the end, you have it looking at each other. That is the side front and the side back will be together, because that's how we're going to join it. So our labeling continues, but we are not done yet. We're going to shape the lower part. Okay, so this is 3. Now we label this as 4. Sorry, label this as 4. Okay, this as 5, and this as 6. Okay, so we have 1 2 3 4 5 6. Now to the alphabet side, this is CD, right? So this will be D E, then this will be E F, and this will be F G. Okay, so I hope you understand. So when we are joining it, B will be joined together. So you know that this is how we are going to join. We're going to join this CC, DD, EE, FF. Okay, so this is the simplest way to label your pattern, or you take it as 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5, 5 and 6, whichever way. So now we want to shape the lower part of our pattern. Okay, so at this side now, you can come up by 4 inches, 3 or 2, depending on how shaped you want that area to be. So I'll be using 2 inches. Okay, so I'll just mark 2 inches upward, or let me use 2.5, because remember we have 1 inch here. So let's we're removing 1 inch, which is the extra I added. So by the time we are done joining, it will give us room to shape it well, to trim out whatever we want to trim out if it's not equal. Okay, so I'm taking away that 1 inch for now before we create our shaping. So that is 1 inch. So from this 1 inch now, you can take 2 inches up. So I'll be using 2 inches. So in other words, it is 3 inches I'm taking all together. Okay, so here too I'm marking 3 inches up. So by the time you have marked it, you can decide to shape it this way. That is, you can mark it in slanty like this to give you back shape. Okay, or you can curve it. So in this very one, we want to curve it. We want it to be curved and not sharp. Okay, so That is, we are talking about creating the backs effect now. You can just place your ruler, connect from this point to the edge, and by the time you connect it, you have that backs effect. But here now, I want to curve it, okay? So you just curve from here to this line. Place your curve whichever way you want it to go. That is how you're going to place it. Okay, so this is just okay like this, and you connect it back to your line. Okay, so just do that carefully. So this, since we'll be cutting out this one, let me write my transfer my alphabet there. So the same thing you do on this side. So for the back, if you want it to be low at the back, that is, if you want to reduce the back, you can do that. Okay, then if you want it to remain the same way, you can just leave it. So you know, sometimes the front can be longer than the back. You can go up by 1 or 2 inches depending on where you want it to relax at your back, but this very one will be left the way it is. Okay, so now just connect it in a curvy way like this. So this is our pattern. You can see the shape now. Okay, so this is how we have it, going this way and this one going this way. So now it's time to cut. So I'll first of all cut the front and merge it with the back. So now I would also write my alphabet here since I'm cutting out this part. So we're going this way first of all. So I'm done cutting, and you can see the way everything is just looking. If I hadn't if I have not labeled it, it will become very confusing. You won't know which one would be joined to which one, the way it is scattered like this. But with the labeling, everything will be easy. Okay, so let's arrange it. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5 here, and this is 6. Okay, so this is 5 like this. So let me make sure my 5 is actually looking like 5, not S. Okay, so this is 5. So you can see the labeling makes it very easy. Or if you are going with the alphabet, you know that this is AB, and this is BB like this, and this is CC, DD, EE. So let me write my E very well. Okay, so this is EE and FF. So you can see, and this is our pattern for Victorian corset. This is how it's going to be joined. You can see. So the back will remain like this because we are going to be having yoke. But in a situation whereby you don't want to have the yoke at the back, then you can shape it whichever way you want. From the center front now, you can go down. Okay, so let me use my ruler. You can just take it down the way you want. From the center front, you can just take it down. But this very client don't want all that. She wants the yoke to just be on it like that, okay? And this one is for the front. So this is how she wants it. So the yoke, this is how I should write it, okay? So this is back yoke. So this how it should be. So let me place it down so you can see. You can see the armhole, okay? I see the armhole for the front and armhole for the back. So now we're going to cut on our pattern on our fabric. And if you notice, I didn't add any other allowance. I didn't add seam allowance because the allowance will be added on the fabric. The allowance for joining each of the patterns will be added on the fabric and the seam allowance. So now let's indicate. We have the center, that is the side. We have the side. This side now we're going to use like 1 inch or 1.5, but for all these ones we'll be using half inch to join them, okay? So I'll just write 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, okay? Then this one 0.5, while on this side I'll use 1.5. On this number 4, I'll use 1.5. So I hope this is clear because this is the center, the side. The side seam allowance will be 1.5, while the allowance for joining each of these parts will be just half inch. Okay, so on this side I'll have 0.5, on this side 0.5, on this side 0.5. While on the zipper side, I will not add any allowance because we already have our zipper allowance here. Okay, so you just write it. So I use pen because I don't want to have marks and numbers already, so I don't want confusion. So you might not be seeing it, but what I have written just 0.5, 0.5 allowance. On this side too we have 0.5, on this side we have 0.5, while on this side we have 1.5, on this side we have 1.5, while on this side 0.5, like that. So when I place it on fabric and cut, it will be clearer to you. So let's do that. So I'll place my fabric on fold, then arrange these patterns the way they are on the fabric, okay? So I have placed my one, two, go. So I have placed my fabric on fold, then arranged the pattern this way and marked the allowance. So the is not so clear because the color of the chalk is on the fabric as well, but when I cut it out it will be clearer to you. So let me just cut it out so that you see the allowance that I added, okay? So now you can see the allowance that I added, okay? So I have half inch on this side, half inch on this side, half inch here, half inch here, half inch. But on this side, which are the two sides, the front side and the back, that is the side front and side back, I have 1.5 inches. So these are the seam allowance. Then one half inch, half inch, half inch, half inch. Then if you realize, if you notice, there's no allowance after the zipper allowance because we already have the zipper allowance there, okay? Then at the lower part as well, I didn't add any allowance because I have already done that on the pattern. So you can do it either ways. You can add allowance directly on your pattern, that is for the lower part, but this other part has to be done on the fabric, okay? But on the lower part you can add it on the pattern, or you can skip that. By the time you place on your fabric, you can then add the half inch. So I decided to just go directly on the pattern paper. So by the time I'm done joining, I can now shape it again how I want it to be, or trim out any unevenness, okay? So you can see the way the patterns are, and this is how we'll go ahead to join them now. So by the time I remove my pattern paper, I'm going to still number them on the fabric. So the fabric was folded, okay? So as you can see, it was on fold. So now I have the wrong side facing up, while at the under now of the next of the other one, that will be the wrong side. So I will pin these patterns accordingly like this. Then at the under one I will pin it. So let's do that together, okay?